Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ural Kids Joy of Parenting Episode 1 Health and Fitness for Young Children with Dr. Rajan Joshi, India's finest pediatrician. Thank you for joining us here. I'm Saili Bhosle, founder and CEO at Ural Kids Online Preschool. We have here with us Dr. Rajan Joshi. Hello, doctor. Who is India's leading pediatrician, presently affiliated with Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital. Welcome, doctor. We also have here Mrs. Yashashri More, who is center head at Angels Paradise Academy Preschool and Daycare. She is also a content head for Ural Kids Online Preschool. Before we start today's webinar, few instructions are there. Please keep your camera off for good connectivity. This is for all attendees. If you have any questions, please use Q&A session. All questions and concerns will be answered. Someone from the team is keeping track of it. We are also live on Facebook page of Ural Kids Online Preschool. And before we start, a little introduction about Ural Kids Online Preschool.
Before I start, let me say a few words about health and fitness. Health is wealth, everybody knows, right? It's a very old proverb, but very true. The true essence of health has to be inculcated from a young age. Being healthy should be a part of our overall lifestyle. It also means the complete feeling of physical, mental, and social well being. Our present lifestyle has become very hectic, and again, pandemic has hit us. This was a new way of living, I think, where people were stuck in their homes. They were not able to go anywhere. Everybody was in their home. It led to family bonding as well, but there was some effects which were felt by the children. And because they didn't have any social interaction, no playing with friends. So we have to keep in mind that children's health, both physical, mental, and social, is very important as well. Exercise, along with a balanced diet, will help us in achieving the goal. Health can be defined as the holistic growth of our body and our mind. And as we had said at Ural Kids, we want to achieve the goal of Fit India is a Hit India. So we will be hosting a series of Limitless Joy of Parenting webinar series, keeping in mind the health and fitness of our children. Today, we have invited an eminent pediatrician, Dr. Rajan Joshi, and who would be answering any queries or questions parents have regarding their children. And I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Rajan Joshi, who would like to, we would like, sir, you to say a few words before we can go on to the question and answer session.
Good evening, everyone. And first of all, I'm extremely grateful to Saili Bhosle and Yashashri Madam for inviting me to take part in this event, which is very close to my heart. Because see, when I started as a pediatrician many years back, I always thought that my role was that sick children are going to come to me and I'm supposed to set them right. As time has gone, I realized that that's not my role. My role is basically to see that children don't get sick. And that's the whole purpose. Who wants, as the main reason which I think all of you parents, when you go to a pediatrician, is not to get a prescription of medicines or not to be told that this is wrong with your child or your child weight needs doing. You want to hear the three words that your child is fine. You want to hear that you're doing a good job. You want to know that everything is going fine. It's all that. And that's more comforting than being told that you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. And I think that we have in today's world become technical of everything. Everything your child does not sleep for 3 hours. Immediately the parents try to Google, what's wrong? My child is not sleeping for 3 hours. My child passed, instead of 2 motions, passed 5 motions on a day. Could it be something wrong? And I think you're taking the fun out of parenthood. The reason why everybody wants a child is to basically get joy in your life. You just don't want to. It's not a proud possession like a fancy car that you're doing, that you want to see that the polish is there, all the lights are going on well, and it goes at a great speed. You want basically love and affection in your house, which is to mutual, which is to be given to that child and a child gives to you. So believe me, what really works rather than all technical knowledge is simple common sense. Most of the children which are grown up in families who are underprivileged, who don't have access to literature, who do not have access to extended families, who do not have access to doctors or pediatricians, they're doing a great job. They're doing a great job because they grow up the child just because of out of sheer practical common sense and level-headedness. So today, the purpose of my talk is just to give information regarding positive health. I don't want to be sound like a spoiler who's going to tell you that don't do this, do what you're doing is absolutely wrong. In fact, there is a lot of the level of normalcy in children is so vast. If you were to strictly follow books, then I think all of us would be abnormal in some way. No, nobody is really normal what the textbook tells you to be. And your children more so. So the level of normalcy is huge. And I think we should all understand that and accept that. And what fits A does not fit two. You cannot have one hat fitting all heads. So you should learn that there is a vast range of normalcy, and you should be liberal in accepting that. And with these, but there should be some caveats. Some things are dangerous, some things are not good practices, some things are not, or some things are good proactive practices which make your child healthier. So I think if we can disseminate that knowledge, and actually this is not trying to tell you that okay, what you're doing is wrong, but just try to reinforce that what you're doing is a perfectly good practices. It may be different from what somebody else is doing, but I think both the things can be right. So with that message in mind, I would be very happy to answer any questions. And believe me, there are some questions which you cannot fit in this time schedule. I promise you that I'll definitely through Eureka's, I'll definitely be able to write, give you an answer on email.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. That was very encouraging for parents to hear that one shoe does not fit all size. Each child is different rather, and we should not think that, oh, if that child is like that, then why my child is not like that. So it's very good that it's coming from the doctor as well. So, and there have been some questions which parents have asked in advance as well. And if there are some questions during the Q&A sessions, we'll raise them as well. But right now, the main concern of all parents is the COVID, Corona, whatever is going on rather nowadays. So is it the first question that had come was, is it possible that children also get Corona or COVID, whatever is happening right now? Do children also face that problem? Because normally we see adults only in the hospital. I mean, I have not seen that, but what I have read and seen on the TV, it's not mentioned that children also would be getting, but sometimes it might be like a 1 month-old child has got or a 1 day child has got. How far is that scenario that children might get it or might not get it?
Okay, this is one topic which I can speak with some authority, because possibly I am still in charge of a facility which was specifically a COVID facility. And so any adult who would get COVID positive, all the children would get tested. Many of them did not have symptoms. So right from the first case of COVID in my hospital was in April. I remember the date also, April 17, 2020. Because till that time we also felt that COVID does not occur in children. But once we started testing them, till date we have found 670 children with COVID. So it's not a small number. 670 in one hospital in Pune. So it's a huge number. Yes. But the disease has been very kind to children. I mean, very few of them were sick. The people, some of them, initially we used to hospitalize them because that was the government rule that anybody with COVID you are supposed to hospitalize. But later on, when we found that the children were not sick, and believe me, staying in the hospital made them more miserable than anything, because try to restrain a child in a room and not to see his parents or anybody with a caretaker I think that was more troublesome than the disease itself. So after that, we have been keeping the children at home. In fact, out of this 672, only 8 of them required some sort of care in the form of oxygen, were serious. And I'm glad to say that there was not a single fatality among children. And out of this, I can even say there was 67 to 70 mothers with COVID who came for delivery who were COVID positive, and all the deliveries were conducted in our hospital, and we allowed the baby to be kept with the mother. We did not isolate or separate the baby from the mother. Baby was allowed to breastfeed from the mother, and there was not a single complication of that. Just 3 of them. In fact, 57 did not were tested at the time of discharge. None of the babies got COVID. So I think COVID exists. In fact, the risk of COVID from to children was mainly protecting the grandparents. It was not that the children were, the babies are children are isolated in the hospital, not because they were in danger, but we could not risk them going to the grandparents who, as you said, was above 60 was at a high risk. So that,
and are the symptoms for COVID different for children
just
and
like
adults?
any other flu, it would just be a child of fever who would just be cranky for a day, who would be having some throat infection, just like any other flu. But I told you, most of the children are asymptomatic. 50 out of our percentage. In fact, we are going to publish this because I think this is the largest series of COVID probably I've seen in the world. In one hospital, 672 children, and 55% were without any symptoms. They were just tested by chance.
Okay, so thank you. So that is something we feel better after hearing, okay, that children are not that affected, but even if they are affected, they get cured very easily and not much is required in form of medicines and all. So one more thing that a question was risen by the parents was that autism and ADHD, that is very prevalent. I mean, is it very prevalent now or was it prevalent before as well? And we didn't have much information about them that time. And now because of more knowledge that parents have at the tip of their smartphone, so they know that, okay, this sometimes that if that parent is feeling that there's something wrong with my child and he can check on whatever he wants, he can just go to the Google and just check it out. So what signs should the parents look for in the child when it's either autism or ADHD, and what would be the age when we would come to know that, okay, I mean, we don't know when the child is a baby or something that, oh, that my child will be having this. We feel that everything is fine, everything is normal, but as the child becomes 2 years or 3 years, so what would be the correct age to diagnose him and what are the signs and symptoms for that?
You're right. In fact, these things are very, very common, and it is. I just said that I'm seeing more autism and ADHD than I ever saw in my lifetime. Possibly 2 reasons. First of all, yes, the illness also is on the rise, and or disorder. I won't call it an illness. It's a variant. It's a deviation from normal development, and also parents are very. Possibly in a joint family with many children around, possibly this things are not picked up. But when you have a single child, the parents focus entirely on that. You get feedback from teacher. Formally, even the school teachers would not be attentive. You would just accept that my child is not performing well, and you would say my child is not intelligent or my child is not attentive. First of all, these are two different disorders completely. We often use them together but there's totally difference in them. Autism is a deviation in which there is basically a lot of social interaction, and there are certain red flags which one has to know. I mean, you can almost talk an entire day on autism, but I will just give you what the parents should pick up. It is basically lack of social interaction. The children just don't know how to interact. There is lack of eye contact. They will never look into the eye. There is lack of any sort of interaction. If they see a child, they would just look at any other child with curiosity, but the child would not know how to interact with that. There is large amount of stranger anxiety. Most important is babies come to us with delayed language. The parents otherwise don't realize. They say that my child doesn't speak well, and they would say otherwise my child is quite okay. He plays. He can hit a ball with a bat. He can kick a ball. But then you ask them that does he understand the rules of game? For example, that one person is supposed to throw the ball and one person is supposed to hit the ball and one supposed to field the ball. They do not know. They cannot understand imaginative or structured game forms. So these are the things which are hallmark of autism. There are unfortunately people label them as mentally subnormal, but they are not. Some of them are super intelligent autistic children also. In fact, I was quite surprised that one child who I've been treating for autism since he was very small, he's now 12 years old, and the mother says that he is a voracious reader and he reads all the classics and he read everything. But he cannot correlate with children. He's doing very well because he's focused on his own job. He can read books at stretch. And that boy came to my clinic and he asked me, Uncle, I have a problem. He said, why can't I do small talk? So I was quite surprised. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, other people come and tell me the weather is good. I can't do that. He said, I can't react to that. I don't know why they come and tell me the weather is good and how are you? So he himself has given his own diagnosis. He says that he's super intelligent, but he says, I cannot do small talk. Mm-hmm. He can talk only purposefully. He cannot crack jokes. They cannot crack jokes. They cannot understand you're pulling somebody's leg. Mm-hmm. They take everything as face value and they're very focused on that. Mm-hmm. Similarly, in ADHD or attention deficit, these children also can be very extremely intelligent. But how do you pick them up? When something is going wrong, they're daydreaming. They're just looking outside the window and think of something else. They cannot focus on a task. They will start a painting and leave it midway. They'll start a game, walk out of it midway. They talk too much, which is irrelevant. Suppose the person in front is not interested in what they just keep on talking. They're easily distracted. Suppose you keep a chocolate in front of them, you tell them that you're not supposed to take it. They cannot resist temptation. They're impulsive behavior. They have to impulsively grab the chocolate and take it. Okay. Similarly, they will sometimes do very risky behavior which you normally won't associate because they are impulsive. They don't think about what they are doing. And they will be always fidgeting. I mean, in the class, the teacher says that this boy suddenly just goes for a walk in the class. When I tell everybody, he just can't help himself. Mm-hmm. So these are attention and they need to be assessed very early and picked up. Autism you said about early, but they can be picked up as early as 1 year of age. Some people
1 year?
Yeah. Okay. And ADHD is slightly older because all children less than 2 years have a small attention span. So you don't know what is normal about them.
Yes, that's the thing, right?
Yeah, they can't be focused. But they need to be picked up because the only treatment then is for therapy. It is, I'll tell you, the best view of autism, somebody told me a very nice way, that basically it's like a computer which is designed to take commands in a particular language. I don't know much about computer, but old time we used to have basic COBOL C, and you are trying to program them in some other language. Mm-hmm. So basically, that's the problem. It's like I am trying to learn Japanese, and you try to teach me Japanese, but by using German as a language, I'll be an absolute failure. Unless you speak in my tongue, I will not understand my Japanese.
Yes.
So this is exactly so. We are trying to teach them in some other language which they don't understand. So it is the role of the therapist who tries to teach to them in their language which they understand. So the circuit's a bit different. So that is the whole key of autism, that you have to catch them early and you have to go to therapists, and these therapists try to have maneuvers by which they teach the same thing in a different language which they understand and not our language. So it is we have to train ourselves.
Understood. Yes. So the main thing is therapy. And do we give medicines also, doctor? Do you give
medicine? No medicine works. You can have medicine. Attention deficit, ADHD, you have certain medicines which can sort of make you concentrate, which can reduce your attention hyperactivity syndrome. But autism, there is no medicine. But some autistic children are born with attention deficit. So you try to treat them. Some autism children have other things like convergence, you treat them. But there is no medical treatment for it. People used to try giving high vitamins, which are okay. Yes, you give vitamin, but that's not a treatment for it.
Okay, so that means there is no medicine for treatment. I mean, we don't treat it as a sickness, but that can be definitely.
It's a developmental deviation. You have to try to treat them. So because I try to be very blunt in the parents saying that there is no medicine. Because if you tell them there is medicine, then if I give them a list of 10, they'll buy those 10 medicines immediately, but they won't go for therapy. It's better to tell them that there is no medicine, then they will concentrate on therapy.
Yes. Because
the therapy, the results are not very fast. They take time. And then parents lose their patience. They don't want to, because they say, we have been going to this therapy for 3 months, we don't see much difference.
It does take time. Yes.
It takes a long time.
Yes. So time and patience is needed on their parents' side. And the child will definitely, we can say that they will be leading a good and normal life like other children as well.
There
maybe a better thing. Maybe it would be better.
there have been a couple of Nobel laureates who have been autistic, and
Okay. Yes.
the person who himself, when he became an adult, he realized that my symptoms were autism. He said he was one of the authorities on autism, and he diagnosed his autism after he became an adult. So,
Okay. And one more thing related to COVID only. That question was asked by many parents that is the COVID vaccine safe for children? When the time comes, should we give it or should we skip it?
in India, I don't know what's happened in UAE, but in India, the two brands which are going to be available, they have not been tested on children. So, in fact, the manufacturer itself says that don't use for children, for anybody less than 18. Not that it's unsafe, but they are not. And let me put it this way: that why, suppose the chances of some side effects is 1%. Why would you want to treat a disease with the risk of the disease is less than 0.1%? So unless you get a vaccine which is 100%, I won't recommend it, because the disease itself is not dangerous for children.
But then, if they're not taking the vaccine, then parents do not feel safe to send their children to school. So how will they deal with this? How do we? If they say that, okay, that my child has not taken I'm not giving the vaccine, but if he or she goes to school and gets affected by somebody else, and how can we avoid that?
I'm not anti-COVID vaccine. I'm just saying that the safety has not been established. If and when it is established, I'll definitely recommend it.
Okay.
But right now, I'm saying that
right now it's not been tested.
But right now, when we don't have a vaccine, you should not be really scared about it, because I told you the children don't give COVID to children. It's mainly from adults. So if you're
from adults.
Yeah. So actually, if you're with children, I don't think you should refrain from them from playing with each other. That's my.
Okay. And there was one more, very pertinent question. It's like a parent had read in a magazine that nowadays we have all these vaccine schedules that we have to give to our children from the time they are born till some 5 years and all. So some parents are avoiding giving that vaccine, saying that why we are putting some antibodies or something in our child's body. Is it,
I won't like to get into controversies, because there is a big anti-vaccine lobby in the world, and who believe that these vaccines are all just the products of pharmaceutical companies and doctors.
Yes.
But believe it, I'll just give you my classic, my experience, and we'll stop at that. When I was a medical student 35 years back, that time I was studied in Bombay, and in Bombay, in a corporation hospitals, we used to have polio wards, we used to have tetanus wards, we used to have meningitis wards, we used to have pneumonia wards, we used to have tetanus wards, and so on and so forth. If anybody goes to Bombay Kasturba Hospital, you'll find that these wards existed. What has happened in the last 40 years? Has our country poverty gone down? No. Has our people's hygienic sense gone down? No. Have our people become healthier? No. Have our people become wiser? No. Is our health system, the government health system, better? No. Only thing has been vaccines, and many of these diseases have disappeared. Now I'm a student for MD, for people who are doing MD, and many of my students haven't even seen any of these diseases.
Okay.
So obviously something has worked, and I try to say polio is gone. We should be proud. 2011, the world had said polio will never go from India. It has been a miracle. It has been the greatest triumph.
Yes.
And this is not in private. These are the whole, I'm talking 80% to 90% of India gets vaccinated only through government sources. So with oral polio, people going to hutments and giving, and we have eradicated polio. I think you cannot there is no reason for you to even say. So even if a parent comes to me and says, I don't want to vaccinate my child, I accept it, I don't try to get. If somebody asks me, I'll tell him my reason. Look, it's regarding COVID. All the world, all the time when the vaccine was not there, everybody was shouting, and when are we going to get the vaccine? And when the vaccine has come, people are saying, I don't think I will be taking it. Is it safe?
Yes. Two sides of the same coin. And now, because of the pollution all around, we find that the cases of asthma has increased in children. Even adults do get asthma, but when it is in children, I think it's more severe. So, what are the symptoms that a parent should look for, that whether he or she has asthma, and before going to the doctor? We get in a panic mode, right? That, oh, my child is not able to breathe, and how, that would be the classic symptom of asthma. not able
See,
to.
asthma is a very wrongly recognized. People almost have a taboo. Nobody wants to use the word asthma. The moment you tell the parent your child has got allergy, your child has got wheezy, they'll accept it. The moment you have asthma, you have really shaken by foundation. It's like a bad word they have heard. They say, no, don't tell me my child has asthma. First of all, childhood asthma is not lifelong. It's not something. It's a disease. It's a condition by which your airways respond to certain substances by becoming narrow, and you give a medicine, and so it's often a short-term thing. So it is not something. It's not an infection. It's not a disease. It's not a stigma you should be carrying. And almost 30% of children have some asthma. 30%. So 3 out of every 10 children. So
Okay.
the definition of asthma is not that person who's coughing, breathing heavily, who's on oxygen. That's a extreme picture. But any child who, with a change in the climate or in when exposed to a trigger, it can be a trigger, it can be a smoke, it can be a parent, somebody smoking at home, it can be some mosquito repellent smoke, it can be cooking smoke, it can be dust, it can be house dust, it can be things like that. Not so much food things which people attribute to. And because of that, their airways go into a spasm, narrowing. And then they find difficulty in breathing. So I think you should go to a doctor. And if a doctor, the most problem is that first of all, there are no people, parents are not ready to accept. And if a doctor gives them something like an inhaler, the 9 out of 10 parents will go to another doctor. They say, give me inhaler first shot, so let's change the doctor. And actually, you should understand that you must be taking the inhalers, because if you, at the right time, if you treat it, your child will not end up with adult asthma.
So does it go away with treatment, or?
It goes away by itself, because most of the asthma, childhood asthma, as your immunity and your lung reactivity improves, you'll go. So the inhaler is mainly to prevent you from getting those severe attacks which will come in the way of your school days being missed, your play, the child not being able to go to the ground to play. The inhalers and treatments are mainly for the child's comfort. Most of the childhood asthma will go away.
Okay, so that's good, parents. If you feel that your child is having asthma, or if in the future, God forbid, something happens, it will be like it will go away. So it's no worries for anyone.
I would just add one thing: that how do you diagnose a child who gets up at night from coughing, a child who while talking gets a cough bout, or child after playing gets cough bout. These are the signs, or after exposure to a particular substance, they start coughing. These are the children who are likely to asthma. So these are the pointers.
So, doctor, I think we would be wrapping up the session in another 5 or 10 minutes. But before that, we would like to ask some more questions with your permission, because there were so many questions, and we are, as you have said, that you would try to answer them as well. So there was this question from a newborn child's parent that right now she's working from home, so it's easy for her to do the feeding and all. But she will be joining office soon, and she wants to give her child formula. But then again, formula is like a little bit taboo over here, that why are we giving formula to children? So because we say that for first 6 months, breastfeeding is the best food for a child. But if now the mother is working and she'll be joining office soon, is it okay for her to give formula, and then like what quantity and how is it? What would be your opinion regarding that?
See, my practical opinion is that formula feeds are what are called as breast milk. We should take it feeding as in an ideal situation, a mother should be breastfeeding a child for 6 months. Okay. Now, yes. In her case, as you said, she's going because of work compulsion. But some mothers would not be able to, they would not be sustained. There are mothers who say that we don't have enough milk after 4 months. So that will happen. So when you are using a formula milk to supplement mother's milk, it is okay. What I'm against is substituting. That I am having breast milk, but I would rather give formula. That is not accepted.
Oh, okay. That would not be.
So I would have given advice to her that why doesn't she express the milk and store it as much as possible.
That is there.
If you express in milk and keep it even at room temperature, it can stay for as long as 6 hours. And if you want to keep it for 12 hours or something, you can refrigerate it in a refrigerator, breast milk can remain for 24 hours. That's the thing. And you don't need to warm it, you don't need to heat it at all. So I feel that that's and don't feel guilty if you have to give formula milk. So see, nowadays the formula milk are much, by regulatory methods, it's not up to I'm not saying that it's the goodness of the food industry. It's basically the governing bodies and regulatory bodies are so baby friendly that they don't like to compromise children. The formula milk, by default, they are supposed to match as much possible as mother's milk. They can't just add their own amount of proteins and they cannot. There are very strict guidelines and rules. What they lack from the mother's milk is the natural products like immunity. Yes. But then, as you said, she's not stopping her breast milk completely. She's basically giving that, and during the time when she's not there. And in fact, I'll tell you, I was very surprised. Even in a city like Pune, one of my kid's mother, she works in a multinational bank, and they are so baby friendly that they say that they have actually a room where the mother can express milk in the bank, and the husband of one of the mother-in-law or father-in-law would go to the bank and collect and give it. So she said, even with that, I managed to keep my child on breast milk completely, even working for 8 hours, because she would express before going to work. Afterwards, she had 1 or 2 feeds regulated at home.
Okay.
She would, and the office would give her time to go after 2 hours, express the milk. So I think that was a great. So these are methods you can do it. So, but suppose the thing doesn't work for you and you have to give formula milk, just give it without any guilt. You're not being a bad one.
Yes, mothers do feel guilty while giving formula milk.
Yeah.
And during our vaccination schedule, we have this tetanus shots that are given to the children. So is it necessary that after that, every year also we should give them tetanus shots? Because normally it is like, if you're getting hurt with some rusty thing and all, our tendency is to go to the doctor and get a tetanus shot. So is it necessary that we do get one every year?
If you follow the normal immunization schedule, which is true for not in India, but in universal, even UAE, wherever you are. So there is after you have certain boosters. You have a booster 1.5 years, you have a booster 5 years, you have a booster 10 years. This is booster for DPT booster at 15 years. So these boosters see to it that you should never ever have to give tetanus at all. After 15, it's 25. Then it's the last 10. You will not believe it. For the last 10 years, I have not given a tetanus injection at all. It is the boosters are covered. In fact, you don't need to give it. That is the reason you give this vaccination. They're preventive.
Okay.
In fact, once you are taking a vaccination schedule and you're following, you don't need to take any vaccine. The only vaccine you need to take ever is if you get bit by a dog, then you have to have dog vaccine. Yes. Otherwise, there's no other vaccination.
And what about the flu vaccine that?
Yes, flu vaccine is recommended every year.
It's recommended, right? Once a year, it's recommended for every vaccine. For adults as well? I'm just asking.
Yeah, children. Adults you can take a call, but children at least 12 years are strongly recommended.
Okay.
After 12 years, that's okay.
Okay, so everybody is is finding this session very informative. But as we had said that we will be, there is a lack of time as well. But before ending of the session, now people have started going out. They have started going to the malls and to all the public places. So now in the malls, we use this infrared thermometers to check our temperature before we are allowed to go inside. So is it safe? That is the thing, infrared thermometer.
Infrared thermometer is not giving infrared, it's a sensor.
It's a sensor.
It does not emit anything. It does not emit anything. It picks up the heat from your skin, converts infrared and gives it to a sensor. So it does not emit anything.
So that name is very scary. Infrared means what?
It's a sensor. So it's like it senses the heat on your skin, converts it into infrared and gives it back. So that's how your temperature is recorded. So it does not emit. You can sit with the thermometer, put your head from 24 hours and nothing is going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Joshi. So would you like to give your concluding statements before we end the seminar, end the webinar? Would you like to share?
My one thing would be that I told you that all parents, that every parent is a perfect parent, because I think the reason why all of you are, I think all of us, in fact, in today's world, we whatever use, the thing which I was telling the lady who said that she's going to work, she starts feeling guilty that she's not doing. See, what are you doing? You're following your career. Why are you following your career? For your child's sake. So don't think that you're sacrificing everything.
So I think all of you, with the intent is that a child will do well. And believe me, in today's world, it is not in the past, and things are much better. You heard, how many times have you heard of your own relative that such and such a child was rushed to a hospital for gastroenteritis and pneumonia? I have seen this nowadays. Except for accidents, with good, decent parental care, all children do well. The nature is on your side, odds are on your side. It is not that you are going through a very dangerous formula race and you have to be watch out for returns. No. So please don't take the enjoyment out of parenthood. Things be a bit liberal that what you're doing is will fine. You need a pediatrician just to hold your hand when you are sometimes you're coming across troubled areas. Otherwise, you don't need your parent. Please feel free to ask who are your pediatrician these questions about what your fears are. Don't keep fears to yourself, and for heaven's sake, don't Google.
Don't Google.
Yeah, because I'll tell you one thing that if you Google, you'll get the first thing. If you are to type headache, the first thing which will tell you is a brain tumor, and that is natural case. So don't do it. I mean, it's not. Google is a impersonal thing. It is all information is not meant to placate you. It's meant to sensationalize. Everything is sensationalized. And if you write headache and if you say it's nothing, probably it's dull news. So the news which is sensationalized is often not the right news.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan Joshi, for all your information that you have shared with us. And the most important thing was that don't Google parents. Please go to your doctor and consult him. And your pediatrician, as Dr. Joshi has said, that he is there to hold your hand. He or she is there to hold your hand, to guide you. And I'm sure all your pediatricians do their best. And thank you, Dr. Joshi, once again. And over to Saidi, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. And thank you, Yashashree ma'am, for a wonderful session. I hope, parent, you found it very much informative and useful. It is just a small announcement that we will be having every Friday, 5 o'clock, we'll have these episodes of Joy of Parenting. So keep watching. See you all. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Joshi. Bye, parents. Have a nice day.